All right, everybody. We have Ted Moyer, BMW MOA Executive Director on the show today. Ted, thanks for joining.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
Man, it's a really big pleasure to have you on the show. When I sent that out, I was like, hey, man, would you like to do this? I was like, man, is he going to say yes or no? So,
I don't know what to say about that. That's awesome. You made me feel good.
yeah, man, that's amazing. Yeah, well, you're a busy guy. You're running a big organization. It's the holidays. So, you know, I really appreciate you coming on. And, I really wanted to start off the show with kind of I don't know if it's a tribute or just setting the tone here, right? So I read the latest article that got published, and we're talking Jack Reapy, right? So obviously a larger than life figure. I just want to run down something. I feel like we're kind of treading on hallowed ground right now, so I wanted to make sure I did this right. And I took some notes. I wanted to kind of relay what I discovered in my research and preparing for this episode, and just let you kind of fill in the blanks. You know what I mean? Because I never knew Jack.
Sure.
But so I read the MOA tribute from Bill in the headlight in the beginning, and then I read the tribute from his daughter Catherine, and I was like, I need to figure out more about this guy. And it became apparent very quickly that I wanted to start the show with talking about him. So I went to YouTube, and a couple of feelings I got when I went to YouTube. Number one, I really laughed out loud, listened to some of his interviews and stories, right? A couple things I wrote down. When he specifically talks about the BMW adventure bike, so I have a R1250. He's like, it can go over a bridge of knotted snakes. The BMW adventure bike is the only bike to weigh 3.5 tons. So yeah. I can resonate with that. So yeah, I laughed really hard. The second feeling I got, I was really like sad. I was like, man, I can't believe I never got to meet this guy or at least hear him speak in person. And the third, I guess, is I was sort of left in a feeling of awe and incredibly feeling inadequate as a creator. Just listening to him tell stories and put words together and phrases. And I wrote this down from the article from Catherine. I thought this described it perfectly. She was like, my father described colors and sounds with such dimension that I believe that he must have expressed or experienced them differently than most people. And that's what when I was listening to him talk, I'm like, where's this guy coming from? I mean, he's so quick. It's so eloquent. So like you get the feeling of like, he's just a motorcycle bro, but it just comes, the underlying intelligence and everything that he calculates and he speaks. So just in the research for this article, I'm not sure if I'm doing him justice, man, but anything you can to say to fill in the blanks there would be fantastic.
It was certainly a wonderful man and just a fantastic supporter of the MOA, and it's going to be, real. Honestly, I don't know that you'll ever replace that person or that we even try. I don't think there's an effort that can be made. I think in general, people don't realize how hard it is to produce content and be eloquent with words the way Jack was, or to come up with even if you want to call it a shtick or an angle, whatever the case may be. I don't think the general public realizes how difficult that can be until you go out and try to do it yourself. It's like you look at a restaurant and you think, oh, well, my food's better. My barbecue is better than theirs. I could be successful in the restaurant business. And there's so much more to it than just, being able to cook a good hamburger or make barbecue. And Jack is probably the epitome of that. Of when you meet him or you speak to him or you get to know him, you don't realize the talent that goes into his craft and how hard he probably worked at it in the years that he practiced. He didn't just show up here at the MOA and start writing, satire for us. And it was just amazingly funny and everybody loved it. I mean, he spent 30 years honing his skills and working in the corporate world, quite honestly, in communications and things like that, if I get the story correct. And then, started writing books and articles and those sorts of things, and sort of found his love or his passion within motorcycles. So it's really easy to underestimate the skill level and talent that was there. That's kind of number one. And then number two, I think sometimes it's lost the amount of passion that a Jack Reapy has for what he's doing and who he's doing it for. And I don't know if the rest of the world knows, but a lot of those articles that someone just writes off the cuff, I mean, those are, for most publications, it's a couple $100. I mean, there's not millions of dollars to be made in the publishing industry or in magazines or as sort of a journeyman content creator. And so, yeah, I mean, you really have to love not only what you're doing, but you have to love the audience that you're doing it for. And I think Jack, I think that's what people see, or the feeling that they got was that he absolutely had a genuine love for all the people that he interacted with. And it was, I mean, it was more than just a paycheck for him. It was life, right? It was just, that's what he did and who he was. And that audience was not necessarily an audience to him. They were friends and cohorts and compatriots, that sort of thing. And so he really is it's a unique thing to put all of that together. I mean, I've seen skillful writers come along who couldn't put the audience together. I've seen people who had a lot of following that, couldn't string two sentences together. You just
Right.
don't get those two things sort of back to back. And then to continue with the longevity that he had, it just, it's pretty amazing. So, um, and kind of talking through all that. I mean, I don't know that we've fully absorbed it internally yet between Bill Wiegand, myself, and some of our other leadership. I don't know that we've verbalized it to one another, but I'm not sure there's any way that we even try to find the next Jack Reapy or to replace him. I don't know that that's even a consideration right now.
It's interesting. Like I said, hallowed ground. I was like, I want to bring this up because this guy just seems like an amazing person, but I also don't want to not, I also want to do it justice, right? And coming onto the scene, like trying to figure out who he was and just listening to him, it's just, I think I was just enthralled. And it's like, okay, he had me. So it's really hard to be a storyteller. It's really hard to be a storyteller. And 2 minutes in, I was like, I'm going to listen to this on my, he had a couple interviews on YouTube, and I was like, I'm going to listen to this while I, do some other stuff, prep here and there. I just stopped. I stopped, opened up the YouTube on my phone and just watched it because he hooked me immediately. And I was like, this is incredible. So what an incredible person. And I think paying tribute to him in the publication is just more than fitting.
He was really like that across the board too. It was funny because I dealt with him more. Bill Wiegand really was his primary contact at the MOA. I dealt with him a little bit, um, and his email is the exact same way as his books are. It's just this, a story that goes on, and there's all these things, and it's kind of like at the end of it, he just wanted to know if he could submit a new article this month, but he told this tale all the way through it. And it was the
Yeah.
same way if he left a voicemail, it went on for 2 minutes or so explaining all the reasons, all the diatribe of why he wasn't able to call you previously or he couldn't respond to your email or whatever. And then it would finally get to the end of, oh, yeah, call me back. So it was
He's
just
like heading into
Jack.
witness protection or something like that. Like
Yeah,
just wild.
really
You know,
interesting guy and just, I mean, really well loved. You saw it as soon as the news broke. I mean, our members just flooded all of our channels with remembrances and love for Jack, and I know I got several even private emails from people who wanted to know what they could do or how saddened they were, that kind of thing. It's a tough loss. It's I get it as part of the journey and this thing that we call life, but change is always really really difficult, and I think we hats off to Bill and to Jack's daughter for really taking an approach and celebrating what he did accomplish and how great of a person he was.
absolutely. I guess last thing I'll leave is I went to the site where they were, selling his books, and the the review that they posted about his books was somebody left a review like didn't suck, and I was like, that seems perfect. That seems perfect.
Exactly.
Seems perfect. Yeah. Well, I the other person I wanted to talk about, we're going to get to the MOA and a lot of the stuff that I sent you. Um, Ray Zimmerman, friend of the marquee. Like, so when I read his story, I was like, man, there's a lot of parallels. At least for me and him, small parallels, but I was enough to make you interested. And I was like, former executive director. I lived in Alabama for a few months. He's from Alabama, former military guy, retired as a colonel, long distance rider, owner, MOA ambassador, just an incredible person. I actually was like, asterisk, should I get him on the show? I'm sure you know Ray personally. Do you have any more to add on just what an incredible ambassador and BMW owner and brand loyal? I don't say brand loyal, but what an amazing person this guy is.
Actually, he was, and when I presented him with the Friend of the Mark Award, he only owned in all his years, 40 plus years of riding, he's only owned one non BMW motorcycle and
Oh,
one
really?
Honda. That was it in the entire time that he's been riding motorcycles. But um, actually, Ray and I do have quite a bit of history together. Very good friend of mine. Actually, brought me to the MOA. He's the person who
Wow.
originally hired me here. 22 years ago now, and I owe a huge debt of gratitude to him. So he was executive director for probably the first 10 years that I was here. It was kind of a second career for him. Like I said, he was
Hmm.
in the defense industry and retired from the Army and was a consultant in the defense industry in Huntsville, and then came over to the MOA. Prior to that, he's a 50-year member, quite honestly. And if you look at him and do the
Incredible.
math, you think, well, wait a minute, the guy's not that old. He literally joined the MOA when he was 21 or 22 years old. He went out and bought a BMW motorcycle, and that was the very next thing that he did was join the organization. And he, really never even thought about another brand or writing anything else. He was just smitten almost from day one. And I remember, when he was here as executive director, I was often in the office with him, and it was nothing for him to be on the phone with someone for, an hour and a half, and advising them on some technical aspect of a motorcycle or a value of some antique bike or where's the best place to sell one today. And I look, in my role now, I look back at that and I think, gosh, I don't, I'm horrible. He's so much better at this than I am. I don't think there's any way I could spend an hour and a half on the phone today discussing those sorts of things. I mean, I do my best to hang in there with members and serve their needs and that sort of thing, but hats off to Ray, right? I mean, it just to take 90 minutes out of your day right now, even
Right.
as much as that's your job, but that is so
Hmm.
precious. And he would do it just call after call after call. And of course, a lot of that was before we had social and email wasn't quite as prevalent, no texting. And so he would have, just a stack of messages. If you remember the little pink slips, so and so called
Yeah.
today, left you a message, and he'd just go through those one after the other, call members back in as much time as it took. And it was much like Jack. That's just who Ray is. I mean, that's just what he did, and that's what brought him satisfaction in the job, so to speak. And I think he saw it as really the fulfilling aspect of being the executive director was the chance to get to talk to people about motorcycles all day long. So he really a fascinating person. Just if when you talk to him and see all the things that he had done and the different careers that he had along the way and all the things he was able to accomplish, just really a fascinating individual and I'm very much deserving of that award for sure.
I think he's like member number 3,000 or something like that, like
Yeah, even less
early
like
on.
yeah, 21, 20 something. He, like I say, 50-year member. I actually sent him his 50-year pin a little bit earlier in the year, and I was almost shocked to see his name on the list. It just didn't even dawn on me that he was a 50-year member.
I'm over here buying a 50-year hoodie. It's like, no, this guy was around at year zero.
Yeah,
That's
he
incredible. Yeah.
when I first came on, I went to I was a contractor when I started here, and he we left St. Louis to drive up to the person that I was another contractor was the person that I was replacing, who was still friendly to the organization, just retiring and moving on to something different. And so we were driving from St. Louis up to Upper Illinois, and just several hours in the car to just sit there and talk. And we end up there's some I don't even somebody will know where it is, but somewhere in Illinois along the side of the interstate is this antique car museum. And Ray, hey, we're going to go in there and look at old cars for a little while. And so we just pull off the road and go into the museum, and we're just hanging out, talking old cars, old bikes, all that
That's
kind of
amazing.
stuff. Just a very genuine individual, really great guy.
You know, I'm sure you learned a lot. You just said it. You learned a lot from him, watching, observing. It's kind of a little quick tangent or detour, but what's it like being the executive director of the BMW MOA? Some of your biggest challenges or, things you deal with that really kind of get you going? I mean, what is that? What is that like?
um,
In 2 sentences. No, just
yeah,
kidding.
absolutely. In 20 seconds or less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think you have to say right away, it's definitely I'm a very blessed and lucky individual. It's a fantastic place to be, and I sometimes I have to re-ground myself that that's actually the case. I tell people all the time, well, hey, today I got to talk about motorcycles. I got to think about motorcycles. I got to talk to people who love motorcycles. Whatever problems I dealt with,
Right.
it's okay because they were all motorcycle related, problems of some kind. So
Wonderful. Yeah.
it really is it's a fantastic position. I'm very, very fortunate to have grown into it. And I've also tell our board of directors, I was telling somebody the story yesterday that I often tell the board, this is family to me. I'm home. I've been home for a while. I don't watch on LinkedIn. I don't keep my resume hot. I may have to someday, but right now I do not,
Right. Right.
because I don't necessarily want to go anywhere else. I love it here, but it's an interesting job. It presents a lot of challenges, and I like that. I love that aspect of it. There's no secret that the membership model is kind of tough. Things are changing very rapidly, and there's no secret that our demographic is a little bit older, and we're struggling, for lack of a better term, to find relevance with a younger demographic. And how do we do that? Our most popular product is a print-centric magazine, which again is facing some difficulty as far as its relevance. I mean, we're sitting here on a video vlog or podcast, however you want to term it, and our biggest product is a print magazine. Um,
Right.
there's just some challenges that are inherent to our model. We're also small. We're our organization is very small, both from a financial resource standpoint, also from a people standpoint. There's nobody here that doesn't, wear 3 or 4 or 5 hats and do several different things in the course
Hmm.
of the day. And even finding time to try to do something different like this is can be difficult. So it's got its challenges, but I enjoy it. I love it, quite honestly. I can't imagine. Uh, don't tell our board this, but I don't know what else I
I'm
would
sure
do
they're
if I
going to hear
wasn't
it.
doing this, right?
You'd
Like,
be on
I don't,
LinkedIn, man, polishing up
yeah,
your resume. Yeah.
I don't know, but I absolutely love it, and I've gotten, um, over the years, the number of people that I've met and know, uh, and got to spend some time with, is just unbelievable. I've been in sales basically all of my life, and I always kind of prided myself on the fact that I knew who you were or where we met. Sometimes I didn't always know names. Usually I do. I'm usually pretty good with recall and that kind of thing. But even the most obscure meeting, I'll remember where we met or how we came into contact or who you are, what the context is. And it's gotten to the point now that there are so many people in the MOA. I've met so many people and come across so many people that that's becoming more difficult. That now people they spring that on me. Oh yeah, we met over at this event back in Pennsylvania 6 years ago. I'm like, oh, we did? Okay. Um, Gosh, I used to be able to know. Maybe I'm getting too old. I don't know, but I used to be able to recall that kind of thing, and now it's getting harder just because there are so many contacts. But it's it's really one of the joys. I tell our group kind of internally, hey, our members they really like for this to be personal. They like to get to know you. They like to see who you are. They like the personalities, and we really have to do our job to embrace that and love them back just as much as they love us. And that's a lot better than being at some faceless corporation somewhere. That's for sure.
Man, you speak the truth. Preach. It's interesting. You said a couple things and that's what I love about these interviews is because I have things, but then you say a few things, and I'm like, oh, we need to definitely talk about that. One of them is, when I actually do this myself because I saw this written down. I don't know, it was on Instagram or something. But when you meet somebody, you're like, oh, hey, hey, Phil. I'm like, man, I forgot his name. And they're like, what you do is you introduce that, oh, hey, big guy, and you introduce that person to a friend. Hey, this is Mary, and Mary would be like, oh, you know what I mean? Then there's all these techniques, like when you forget somebody's name, it's I'm sure you have them nailed down being in sales for all those years, but I thought that was absolutely hilarious because I've used that in the past. You talk about the demographic, younger riders. I'm glad you brought that up. So going back to spend some time with the family at Christmas, and my brother's, I think he's 31. I'm going to do a sit down with him, do an interview. I believe he would probably be the target demographic, right? 31 years old, medical sales, has a couple motorcycles, disposable income. How do we bring that generation of riders over, right? Especially you have a print magazine. I don't know if he's reading print magazines, but I'd be interested if that's kind of the struggle, right? You said it is, but what are some of the, I guess, methodologies or tactics or whatever? How do you reach out to that younger sort of 30-year-old generation and try to get them into the organization and to appreciate what, guys like you and me appreciate?
Yeah, it's the number one challenge, right? It's the hurdle is getting people in the front door and getting them just to take a little taste. For years we would lead with our magazine. If someone would say, "Oh, why should I join the MOA?" Oh, you get this awesome magazine called the BMW Owners News. It comes right to your door every month. It's all full, four color, all about BMW motorcycles, all that kind of stuff. And and back when the only media that you could get was a print magazine before there was social, before the web hit, before any of those things really developed and the way of digital magazines or applications, that kind of stuff. That was a big deal. We were the only source of BMW information. And so I think we have had a really hard transition to move from that to embrace really what we've been about the entire time, and it's the community. It's getting
Right.
involved at a deeper level. And so, certainly for a younger person, or for any, I should say for any person really, the pitch ought to be, hey, if you love motorcycles, if you love riding, if you love being out there in the wind, knees in the breeze kind of thing, and you're doing it on a BMW, we are the place because we've got the like-minded people in the spirit to kind of support you. And let you know that you're in the right place, that this was a good decision. And then from there, it's about, the discussions, the magazine, the anonymous book, all those physical products that we have that are worth your $49 a year. But I think it's so hard to wrap your hands around, tangible, to make community tangible. And right when you go sit down with them, you're going to have a tough time holding the community in the palm of your hand and saying, well, this is what you get. But
Right.
that really is it, right? I mean, that's what we're after, both as a buyer and a seller. And so we really have to do a better job of letting people know that, hey, your brothers and sisters are right here. You don't have to look any further. We're all right here for you, and we all face similar challenges and have similar questions. And guess what? We've got the answers too. Our community can help you with the answers, and I think that's the biggest piece of the puzzle.
I guess that would probably tie into or directly lead us to one of the topics I want to talk about. Brian published an article about working for our future. So we're talking about, getting in new folks. And it was interesting to see the strategic plan, and what he mentioned was it's in progress in 4 years, driving all the improvements. And I'll just, quickly summarize: growth, connection, support, inspiration, and excellence. And, frame them up as, lines of effort. And how does that, it feels like a revamp. It feels like a rebrand. It feels like, all the things that you're kind of alluding to and kind of moving away from things that worked for so long and trying to find new things. Maybe you want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I hesitate only because it's not the sexy side of the MOA sometimes. I
It's
think our
okay. I'm a former
challenge is
corporate
to
guy. It's okay.
well, we get chastised from time to time about being too corporate. I have a short story, but we published a financial report one year, and I put some commentary with it, that was admittedly sounded very corporate. All these things happen, blah blah blah. And the very first comment came back, said, "Could you just tell us what happened? Do you
Cliff
have
notes,
to put all
please.
that corporate speak in there?" I was like, "Okay,
Right.
sorry guys. If you get to know me, I'm actually a pretty simple guy." So,
Well,
um,
and sorry to interrupt, but that's why I wanted to ask you, because when I read that, I was like, I feel like I'm, in a Q1 strategy meeting somewhere, right? And I was like, okay, so this is great, but obviously we published it for all the members to read. So what does this mean to me or everybody else? That's
Yeah.
kind of why the path I was going down.
No, it's good. We're definitely our current every board of directors has a little bit of a flavor about, how they want to interact and what they want to be known for. And this current board definitely has a flavor of more openness, a bigger connection to the membership directly, not distanced or aloof in any way. They're also, I think, very interested to tackle some of the harder problems, like how do we solve the membership problem? How do we flip this model and go ahead and admit that, we can't stay a print magazine forever. We have to look at different ways of delivering media and what's the solution there. And so the strategic plan, although not all that exciting, it actually was a strategy meeting. We sit down a couple times a year with our board and sort of lock ourselves in a room, and we go through all this and is this the right plan? Are we making progress against those things? If we're not, what do we need to be doing, differently? And then what other new ideas do we have? What's the best thinking in the room about how we move it forward? And when you talk about working with boards, there's often, I mean, those guys change out pretty regularly. Yeah, every 2 out of 3 years we have an election, and we have the potential to get new members on that board, and so the flavor can change pretty rapidly.
Right.
And this was a way for us to kind of carry it forward year on year. Of this is, we can verbalize that this is the best thinking in the room at the moment. If you have something better, well, then let's get that down on paper as well. But for now, this is our plan forward. And Brian and the current board were very adamant about sharing that with the membership. I tend to look at it and go, I don't know, guys. I don't think it's that exciting for our members. But um, it has received, some very warm comments, and there are some members, admittedly, who are very interested in that kind of thing. I'm behind the scenes kind of a strategy nerd. I love to figure out how things work and what's going to move them to the next level. I mean, whatever it is. And so that kind of thing is interesting to me. Whereas, writing stories like Jack, I don't have that talent. So that's not good for
Right.
me. I leave that to the Jack Reapys of the world. Uh, the current plan is, we didn't have a very cohesive plan coming into the last couple of years. This is the first time that I've seen them really adopt and just completely commit to all levels of, yes, this is the plan. It's the right plan. We're on the right track. And we're also going to have some sort of, evaluation, and then in turn making sure that there's no better idea out there or available. And then, of course, again, it gets kind of boring or nerdy, but at the next steps, how do we start to set up the resources? How do we allocate some resources to go do this? How does the board help me with staffing or financial investments or whatever the case may be, and make those decisions? And so, I mean, I really applaud them for what they're doing. I'm always a little bit nervous to share it, maybe because of the criticism or self doubt, maybe that we're on the right track or whatever the case may be. But I think they've done a really good job to be open about this and how we take it forward. And I think changes sort of move to the next one, but changes in the roadside program is one of those things that part of our strategy was to start measuring member satisfaction. Where are our pain points? What are they happy with, and what are they not happy with? And one of the things that came up that we knew but hadn't necessarily verbalized is that we had holes in our roadside assistance plan, and so we locked ourselves in that same room and said, how does it get fixed? And that's part of the process.
You kind of teed that up for me. I saw, I read about it in the writer segment. There was some not so great opinions about it. And I saw, I think there was a communication from you about it. Is it just simply a matter of switching to a different service provider? I'm not sure how it's structured, but looks like there were some issues, and you are improving that. So if I'm out in the middle of, Moab and get a flat tire or whatever, I should have some pretty responsive service. I think based on what I read, it was like that was the problem: response and customer service, and just getting the problem fixed for that person out on site. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm
So
being too
there's
generic there.
no. I think you've got it. I mean, it's really two issues with roadside, and it's basically with any program like that. They're sort of inherent. One of them is service level for roadside needs towing, right? I'm just what you said. I'm in the middle of the desert. I need a wrecker, and can you get them here? And there's unfortunately those calls come at a very bad time. Your motorcycle is broken down. You're in the middle of nowhere. You're alone. You don't
Right.
have cell service. I mean, there's just a whole lot of things that are working against you that make that process difficult. Then you layer in with, well, now someone has to go interpret your needs, has to go find a provider. That provider has to be willing to come and get you, right, and take you wherever you're going. And then now the last layer is deal with all the financial constraints of that. And so Roadside has some real challenges to it. And I will say that our current provider, that's where they're stronger, is on the towing network. But we still, if someone hears this, they're going to say that guy's full of it. They have huge problems or huge
Right.
holes in their Roadside network. And it's
Hmm.
true. Roadside right now is struggling just like the rest of the labor market is with good qualified help. Number one. Number two, the costs are skyrocketing in roadside and towing because of labor, and so it's going to face some additional challenges. That's just half of the problem that we have. The other half is with our tire program, and that's the part that we've addressed right now. We'll come back to the
Okay.
other one in a second, but the tire program, we've moved to self-administering that process. So before, our roadside provider was administering that process, and again, it comes when you have a tire claim. It's one of those things that comes at a really unfortunate time. I mean, the scenario is you've run over something in the road, your tire's flat, you're pissed, for lack of a better term. You're going into the dealership to get it replaced. You want it done right now. It's Saturday. And guess what? You have to have pre-authorization on your tire claim before it can move forward. And that usually catches a lot of people by surprise. And I fully admit, it's a completely artificial barrier. That pre-authorization is completely artificial, completely. There's no rhyme or reason for it other than to control the number of claims. It's no different than saying
Right.
everyone with a 3.5 grade point average is in and everyone below a 3.5 is out, right? It's just completely arbitrary. And so we had been trying to work with our provider to basically say, hey, it shouldn't be arbitrary. If that's a legitimate claim, if it's a legitimate claim and we need to determine if it is, then it should be paid if it's legitimate, pre-authorization or not. I realize you have to have some delineation point, but if it's a legitimate claim, it should be paid. They have a different opinion or see that process differently just in their network. And so bottom line, we said, hey, we're going to take over the administration of those claims. We're going to set up a different process. We believe that we understand motorcyclists a lot better than our tire claim center provider did. We can sympathize that you just got a nail in your brand new Michelin Pilot, that you
Right.
just paid
Right.
$300 for and you only have had on the bike for 400 miles. And we think we can do a much better job of administering that claim process. The mechanics of that industry don't change. I mean, quite honestly, it's still a group of people, purchasing some sort of coverage, and you're essentially gambling on whether or not you need to make a claim. We're simply going to make that claim process a lot smoother and a lot easier for you. So that's kind of the second, and I do think that we fully believe that will address a lot of concerns and a lot of issues that we had with our top tier platinum program where most of our people exist today. Now,
Hmm.
go back to the first half, right, of roadside towing. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of solutions to the labor market or some of those other hurdles that we're talking about. We do think that if we can do a better job administering our tire claim process, is there some lessons that we can learn in our roadside network process and apply those there as well? So there's a little bit of, let's tackle the tire program first, let's get it right. And then if we're correct that we're successful at this, we think there's a way to apply that to our roadside business and make it stronger. And then, of course, you mentioned it. If there's not, then we need to be, say this correctly in case anyone else is listening, but we need to be evaluating who our providers are and whether or not they're living
Right,
up to our
right.
standards or not. And if they're not, then we have to make a change. And that's, I mean, that's just a reality of the business. So again,
Two,
kind of
yeah,
boring stuff, right?
no,
The
I'm
behind the scenes isn't
fascinated.
all that exciting, but we, I mean, the roadside program has been mine for probably the last at least 7 years, and so it's a big deal to me to get this right because most of the claims or the disgruntled members end up with me, and I don't,
Hmm.
right? Those aren't fun conversations to have for anybody. I don't want to make members mad. I would love to make all of them very, very happy. And so that's what we're after here.
Two questions with that. I
Yeah.
think number one, and who knew we could talk for 20 minutes about roadside, but I love it. Number one is the approval authority for the claim. So I'll use my truck as an example. You buy tires at, whatever tire shop. Hey, you can get the road hazard. You go get a nail. You go to the shop. The guy at the shop's like, hey, this is legit. We can replace, repair, whatever. You mentioned you go to a dealer. Is it somebody that's remote, or does the mechanic say, hey, this is legit? We should pay for this? That's question number one. Question number two, quick one. I wonder, and I don't know if there's any metrics associated with this, how many tow situations or tire situations with result in towing could have been repaired on site. And it's not an indictment on the rider. I'm just saying, like, if you had the tools and a small pump, you could just pump it up and at least get somewhere before you need towing. So maybe there's no data associated with that. But as you were talking, I was like, man, there I was out in the middle of Utah somewhere. If I got a flat, at least I have an air compressor and I have a way to plug the tire and all that sort of thing. So, anyways, I'll leave you with
Yeah.
those two questions. Yeah.
I giggle only because the second scenario, Reese Mullins, our former president, lives not too far from me, and we'll periodically meet for breakfast and go to the local club meeting. And he was late for breakfast, and of course I checked my phone. He's like, "I got a flat tire," and so we went back. And he's already called. He's got a new RT, so he's got full roadside coverage through BMW. And I start talking to him. I'm like, do you have a plug kit? And he goes, no. He says, I have an air compressor, but I don't have a plug kit. And I'm like, well, I got a
Oh
plug kit,
no.
but I don't have an air compressor. And so we plugged his tire on the side of the road, got him going again, and it was actually surprising how quickly
Hmm.
we were moving. So yeah, I don't know what the metrics are either, but a pretty handy skill to be able to plug those tires. And he actually posted about it online and Facebook and social media, and of course he got all the all the comments about how could you not know how to plug a tire? you know,
Right, right.
People
I'm just trying to
after.
imagine the scenario where, like a tire just rips off a rim, and of course you're gonna need
Yeah,
towing. But I think in most cases you probably just run over something, and hopefully you can plug it and move on. At least get you to where you need to go to get it
yeah,
fixed. Then, so. But yeah, the first question about the approval process. What's
yeah.
that like?
So all that really is it's the pre-approval in the current system. It's the pre-approval that's key. They just have to get that because that's what controls all the illegitimate losses. And if you have a legitimate loss, you don't want to have to pay for something that is not legitimate, right? I mean, you don't want to pay for theft or fraud or anything like that, and you do is the reality. That's all. Whatever theft or fraudulent claims actually do get paid, that gets factored into rates for the future, and whoever buys the tire protection pays for that ultimately. And so our current provider is just simply trying to hedge those losses and make sure they don't allow any fraudulent claims to come through. And so for them, the pre-authorization is the first step. And then they're definitely getting, once that pre-authorization is placed, they're getting to that dealership, to a service writer or to a customer who's either providing pictures, a repair order, they're verifying costs of the tire, all that kind of stuff. But once it gets to that level, they usually sail right through. They fly right through. And so our contention is it's that pre-authorization. If we can make that go easier, if we can help insert ourselves in that process and really make sure that those are legitimate claims, because that's the issue. That's what they're trying to control is just simply,
Right,
is it
right.
a valid claim? And there's plenty of ways to do that without this artificial barrier of pre-authorization, right? There's pictures, there's a relationship with the member, which we have in some cases. I mean, if Phil calls me and says, hey, I picked up a nail I had to get my tire replaced. I know I didn't get the pre-authorization, but here's the scenario. I mean, there's a certain amount of, well, I know Phil. He described all the things. I heard him talk about buying new tires just 2 weeks earlier. This is a completely legitimate claim and it needs to be paid. And that's what it's there for. That's what you're after. It's just
Hmm.
really hard to get that in a big system. And so, or in a big network, right? A big pool. And our thought process is, well, no one can do this. We're a small group. No one can do this better than us. We can help. We can get involved here and make this much easier and better. So, to answer your question, it is the provider who ends up approving things in the end. But if all of those I's are dotted and T's are crossed, there is no denial. They don't have any grounds to stand on and say, well, that claim's denied. If they have a service, an RO, if they have the cost, if they have the pre-authorization, if they have a word from the dealership that, yes, we replaced this tire, it all goes very smoothly.
Very nice. Now you got me thinking like I need to sign up for this program because when you were talking about Roadside, I was like, well, some people have Roadside through whoever, but I'm like, I don't think my insurance has a tire replacement program. Most probably don't for motorcycles, I would assume.
They don't. We're one of the only ones that I know of, and when we put that program in place, we were pretty confident that we were the only people that had it. There's some programs out there for wheel and tire, which are much more
Mm,
expensive because you're also insuring the wheel basically. But
right.
we're the only people that I'm aware of that have some sort of tire replacement, and so it can be a very valuable program if it's operated correctly. And I think that's the thing that we finally had to come forward and admit, hey, this is just not it's not being operated correctly. So let's fix that.
Fantastic. I'm going to sign up and file a claim. And under the claim, I'm like, what happened to your tires? Like, shagged them out, man. Just like
Yeah,
8,000 miles last year. Like,
exactly,
I don't know what to tell you.
exactly.
Could you put some new knobbies on the box? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Speaking of riding, man, I'm excited, and I want to pivot to something a little more, I guess, fun. Last night, I signed up for the rally in Oregon,
Nice, good
so
for you.
I expect an autographed mug coming in the mail soon. But I'm almost embarrassed to say this because I'm interviewing you, but it's going to be my first one. I've been to motorcycle rallies, but my first MOA rally, and I've heard about them, read about them. I mean, just what makes them so incredibly special?
It really, I mean, it goes back to, this is going to sound cheesy, but it goes back to that
Nope.
whole, what would you sell about the membership? It's the
Right.
community. I mean, it's the
Hmm.
walking on the grounds and you are with your people again. And there are, again, this is the place where I usually run in and have that conversation of, oh yeah, I saw you at Pennsylvania 3 years ago, and those sorts of things. But for year on year, you see similar people or the same people or people that you haven't seen. You see friends, right? Just time and time again. And it's not just one or two or three. It's 5,000. And you really, I know, I can remember going to my first one, and I was so a fish out of water, so to speak. I mean, I was a new contractor, not even an employee. I was a new contractor. They told me to show up at the rally. They didn't tell me where to go, or I mean, I didn't even stay at the staff hotel. I had to make my own reservations and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I knew no
Right.
one, didn't
Right.
know anybody. I was working remote. I mean, whole 9 yards. And I just showed up on the rally grounds and literally walked up to the back door of what is the exhibitor building, and the member who was guarding the door, I told him who I was and what I was doing, and he was like, "Oh, come on in," you know, and it was like being on Cheers, to Norm, he's
Right.
he's
Right.
here. And from there it was just on, and it progressed to maybe, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 rallies later. I've met a bunch of people at this point, both friends and colleagues. And I can remember very specifically, I was hustling across the rally grounds to get somewhere. And these guys I knew were all in front of their tent. And they were like, "Ted, come here." And I stopped and I go over and I was like, "What's up, guys?" And they're, "Sit down, we're cooking breakfast." And they're literally cooking pancakes, over their little camp stove. And I stayed with them and sat there and had pancakes for a few minutes, and then got the call on the radio and went back to whatever it was that I was doing. but it's that kind of thing. I mean, I think uh, people take a week's vacation, 10 days vacation in some cases, to be there at the rally and work their tails off. And they love it. They wouldn't think about doing anything else. And our staff is kind of the same way. We just block out that week because we know we're going to be at the rally. And I don't think anybody ever thinks about how hard it's going to be or how many hours you're going to put in. It's just like we're going. It's the rally. We have to be there. That's the place to be. So um, it definitely is that community and that feeling of friendship. And if anybody is questioning whether they should go or are they going to meet people there or are they going to be accepted, you got to. I mean, come, absolutely come. You will be welcomed with open arms as soon as you get there. Now, I would say, if you're coming for your first time, there's a couple of places like registration or the volunteer desk or a few other places that I would go volunteer and work if you can. Set up always. You meet lots of people. You have a lot of fun. The work's not hard. We'll help you out. All that kind of stuff. So the more you give, the more you will get back for sure. Um,
That's
so
amazing. Well, I was going to
yeah.
ask you. You talked about if it was your first time. There's a bunch of I'm sure uh, people like me, first time. And you get the option: hotel, camp, camper. Like I have all three. Well, I don't have all three. I have a small camper. I'm like, man, what should I do? I'm like, oh, it's going to be Oregon. It could be pouring rain. I don't want to be in a tent with mud everywhere, but who cares? You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
what would your recommendation be?
So this one, this site in particular, there is a lot of space. It's a big fairgrounds, big facility, and so tent camping is going to be plentiful. It also has
Okay.
the advantage that the temperatures and the climate should be really nice that time of year. There's also there's a very nice RV park there, although it's getting close to sold out, but there is a very nice RV park on site. There's also a very large boondocking area, or what we call
Oh,
overland camping, that will be,
yeah.
I think, is really fun. It's a little bit more remote, but you're probably out there with a little more hardy souls, so to speak, and
Hmm.
again, some kindred spirits maybe. I like the overland sort of boondocking area a lot. But any of those are possibilities. And if you're just not a camper, period, about half of the people will be in hotels. And so you won't be alone if you decide to stay in a hotel somewhere to get over to the facility each day. It won't be difficult. And the process isn't hard. So you really can't go wrong, to be honest. I mean, I know when I stay off site, and I mean we're working 18, 19 hours a day, so it's
Right.
really no other options for us. But I know at the end of the night when the band's closing down, it's kind of like, oh man, I gotta leave. It's time to go, and you kind of want to hang out just a little bit longer and make it last a little bit longer. So
I mean, do you get to? It's obviously the largest, I would assume, event of the year. Do you get to have a little fun, or are you just so busy working that you just what's it like for you and your staff?
it's definitely work. We're there, so we get there. Some of us get there Saturday, typically Sunday, but some of us are there Saturday afternoon, and then Sunday morning we go to work, typically unloading the truck and getting set up started. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is just all day long until it's done, getting the infrastructure set up for it. We have a lot of people who have started coming now Tuesday, Wednesday. They're getting there early and earlier, um, and to try to help set up or volunteer or be part of the festivities, however you want to look at it. By Friday afternoon, it begins to relax a little bit, and it's really Thursday morning. For me, it's Thursday morning, and when the big crowd hits, and once we get past about Thursday at noontime, it's like, okay, nothing blew up, nothing burned down.
Right.
All the Wi-Fi is still working. We're in good shape. We can get through the weekend to Saturday, but it's I mean, it's kind. I'll be honest. Again, a little bit of a nerd about this kind of thing, but it's kind of a rush for me. It's fun to see it come together and to pull it off. I know one year in Missouri, we did something completely different for closing ceremony. And this is so cheesy, but we had the rally chair that year had a parade for closing ceremonies. It started at one end at the BMW demo tent, and they hired a marching band, and they had the fire trucks
Oh
come
wow.
out, and they we were giving away a bunch of motorcycles, and so we had this parade of fire truck, marching band, motorcycles, making their way down to the
Hmm.
stage. And the idea was that everybody would join in and make their way over to the stage. This fire truck's going and the band's playing, and all the motorcycles have all their blinkers on, and I get a little teary eyed just watching it all come together. It's
Just
kind of
one
crazy.
solitary tear rolling down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't
This,
think maybe people do or don't, but just the logistics of bringing 5,000 people together, everything from where are they going to use the bathroom, where's water at, how do we feed folks, how do we, you know what I mean?
those
What an incredible lift.
discussions, yeah, we have some really special people that know that kind of thing inside and out, and it goes on. I mean, we're talking about that before this. If we're talking about that for 25, before 24's even
Right,
gotten
right.
here. So, Becky Smith, my counterpart, was a rally chair in 21. She's our chief operations officer, and Bob Aldridge, who was our former executive director, who was my boss for a number of years. He was a co-rally chair at that Missouri rally that I was talking about, and of course he ran quite a few rallies as executive director. And those two really are in charge of all of our logistics and setup. And so decisions about how many porta johns, how many shower trailers, how many food trucks, what type, when are they going to get there, how do we get exhibitors in and out, what's security look like, who's going to man the gates overnight, what's an evacuation plan, how's the fire truck going to get in and out, and the list goes on. I mean, that's just what I can rattle off in 30
Right.
seconds. But uh, I can remember sitting at the table not too long ago at one of the rally sites, and they said the chief would really like to have your emergency plan, your emergency action plan. And I can looking across the table and went, well, what's that? What are we talking about here? And they said, well, if anything goes wrong, we need to know what you're going to do. And I'm thinking, well, what couldn't go? I mean, it might be easier to list what doesn't go wrong than what
Right.
can go wrong. I mean, we've had, and we haven't had anything bad, knock on wood, but I mean, the opportunity for it is outrageous. So a few years ago, we had a pizza bus catch on fire in the middle of the night. And
Oh man.
so, it's that kind of
Extra
thing.
crispy.
It's like, well, gosh, there's so many things that could happen. And I mean, it just, Bob and Becky boil all that down to medical emergency, criminal activity, whatever, get it into these buckets. And when something happens, this is how everyone's going to respond. And I look at it and I go, well, thank God that's not my job. That's awesome that somebody else does that.
Yeah. I think you got to start with a plan, but understanding that most plans kind of disintegrate when things start to go awry anyway. So,
Yeah.
and that's not even accounting for the weather. Hopefully it doesn't rain, or hopefully you don't get a windstorm or some weird thing happen. But you
It's
know,
probably our biggest challenge. I mean, we've had storms blow up. Heat's been a big one recently. You name it. It's I think you got to kind of live through some of those and have that. I know a couple years ago in Springfield, it's just like, okay, well, we've got this medical emergency and guys having a heat stroke, and all right, everybody get out of the way. We got to get a bus in here and deal with this, and
mhm.
then get him back out, and then everybody goes, okay, back to the rally.
Yeah, we
So
had, and yeah, the weather is incredibly. I did a Moto Marshall event for a bicycle race in June here in Colorado, and so they were camping at various spots, and they would have the tent set up, and it was this year June, like hailing, 30 degrees, sleet, mud, and these people are in tents and their bicycles, and I was just like, man, this is misery, But they got through it and they did it, and who knew in June, right? I mean, obviously weather is very unpredictable here, but I think one of those things you just got to like, well, just got to deal with it and move on. Some things you can't afford to, just kind of be stoic about it and just go with it, you know.
the weather is such a we got a lot of really positive comments about the 50th in Virginia, and I told several people, I said, well, you have a great facility and we had fantastic weather, and those two things, are really key. If you didn't have that, it's very, no matter what level of customer service you provide, it's very difficult to overcome a poor facility or bad weather. So some of it's, I mean, we do our homework to pick the facilities, and then we definitely um, try to help ourselves by picking the right time of year and the right locations, and hope for the best from a weather standpoint, and then just simply put on our best customer service that we can, and go from there. It's a good time. I mean, everybody should go. I don't know that I've run into a handful of people in my 20 plus years who said, well, I went to a rally and it was horrible. I just don't,
Right.
it's very, very rare. It happens, but it's rare.
Yeah. I talked to, well, I've interviewed Scott with Rider Justice. He's going to be there. He was super excited. Yesterday, I interviewed Mike from the Motorcycle Relief Project. He's like, oh, we're stoked. We're going to be there. Like you said, I haven't talked to anybody that has been there that's like, it's not worth going. Everybody's usually like pretty pumped when I bring it up.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited.
It's fun. It's fun. Like I said, it's a lot of work, but to me, it's like going to Bike Week or any other annual pilgrimage that you make. It's the same way. I feel the exact same way about it. I just can't imagine. It's on my calendar from now until the day I die, whenever that is. It's that week is blocked off.
Man, that is fantastic. We're coming up on time. Got about 5 minutes, and I got some things we didn't get to. That's okay. I guess I just wanted to open the floor up for you at the end here, and just we talked a little bit about it, but maybe you want to frame it up just to kind of close things out. Not just 24, but the future of the MOA, how you see it, the growth model, the positive things that are coming. What an incredible organization! I think even just going through the website. I mean, there is just, you could spend days reading all the information on there and all of the subject matter experts. What an incredible assembly of folks over time. So maybe you just want to recap or kind of give what your vision is or where you think things are going. I think that'd be super fantastic to wrap things up with.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. It's a fantastic organization. Like I say, it's been, I stumbled into it myself. Um, I actually became, truth be told, I became a member when I was applying for that first job, and thought, well, that probably looks good if I'm a member to give me a leg up on the job. But I very quickly found my people, so to speak, and it became home to me. And I mean, today I can't imagine what I would do without it, or how things would have been different, had I not found it. It's a great place. The organization, I mean, it's been a lot bigger. We've done some things differently over time. I mean, you can take whatever angle you want to say, well, it was better then, or this was better, that was better, whatever the case may be. I'm proud of our organization and our members to kind of think about what's coming next and where we go, and how it's going to be better in the future. I mean, I don't know too many things that are still around at 50 years old from a institutional or organizational standpoint that are really
Right.
grassroots. That are just completely grassroots, right? I mean, it's just rare. Is the equivalent of a restaurant being here for 50 years. I know I used that analogy earlier, but it just is really rare. So um, the future is super, super interesting for us. I think we really are. We're at the point now where we're forced to do some things differently, and we are a little bit older and a little slower to change. And now we're kind of getting to the point where, okay, some things are going to be forced to do it differently, but that's not necessarily bad. It means that we get to investigate things like this, different forms of media, and what does video look like, and how do we do things in digital, and how do we connect people, not just the old fashioned way through a rally or through a forum, but how do we really leverage some of those assets that are out there in front of us, whether it's, social media, however you feel about that, or a connection like this via video, or smaller pop-ups or motorcycle shows, or whatever that may be. So there's actually some really fun stuff on the horizon. And then I think we're kind of making that full turn. I mentioned that the organization almost completely grassroots driven and very driven on volunteerism. And then
Right.
at our largest level, I think we got away from that a little bit, because it's just harder when you talk about having 40 or 50,000 members. It's harder to really embrace that volunteerism and find something for a percentage of those people to do, whatever it is. And now that we've sort of come back down again to 25,000 members, I think we've sort of come full circle to say, well, this is really about, the number of people that are volunteering, and how do we get them engaged and involved in the organization, and how do we give them opportunities to contribute and really make this their own. So, finding the next Phil, the next Jack Reapy, the next Matt Parkhouse, the next Dustin Sylvie, who are those people and how do we get them involved in this organization, and let them feel the same thing that I feel, that this is home. And that's no easy task, but it's exciting for me. I think about that sort of thing, and really eager to tackle it, and wake up and think about it every day, and how do we make that happen. So I'm excited. It's still a fantastic organization, really the only one of its kind. There's no other mark, no other brand has what we have, what BMW has, or what this community has, and that really is fantastic. It's a unique group, and it's a fun place to be.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think, I'll just kind of dovetail on that just a touch. Um, every time I go out and look at my motorcycle, every time I throw a leg over it, and I've owned so many, I don't say so many, maybe like 13 or something, but it's just like an incredible experience. You just smile every time. You're like, this is where I want to be. This is what I love to do. And this is an amazing piece of equipment. And I think not just through the bike itself, but through the organization, and everything I'm hearing you say, everything from, I don't even have my LinkedIn page, I don't have a resume, like I'm home. And that speaks volumes, especially with folks, every 3-4 years they're looking, and what's the next promotion? What's the next this and that? And it just speaks volumes to the organization and the culture that you've established and you're trying to continue to establish, all the way from Ray up to yourself. It says a lot about the culture and why people should be a part of that versus, we're a revenue driven organization and, shareholder value and all that stuff. So I really thank you for sharing that. That resonates big with me. And I'm sure
Yeah,
everybody
it's my
else.
pleasure. It really is it's an honor, quite honestly. I mean, it's a pleasure.
All right. Well, Ted Moyer, Executive Director, BMW MOA, thanks for being on the show, man. I can't wait to get this published. We'll wait till after Christmas, but I'm sure folks will be just blown away listening to all the amazing content.
It's great to talk
All
to you.
right,
Thanks
let's
for
wrap
giving
it
me
up,
the
man.
opportunity.
Yep, absolutely.